Hello, so here is the waterfront I designed in a previous video, and as I mentioned in that video, the waterfront is a great place to start a Minecraft city, which is why I've decided to start a creative city on this island here, so that I can bring everything together that I've been experimenting with on my testing world into an actual vibrant and interesting city. So to give some context, this is an island I've designed using World Painter, and firstly in this video I'm going to work on an expansion to the right side of it, where I will eventually be adding a marina with lots of boats and things, and then as you can see we've got what I'm hoping will become a nice beach further beyond. So to start with, let's get right into it by copying over the base of these modern apartment buildings here to plan out where I'm going to design some different apartments later in this video. And in the middle between them here will be a nice pedestrian street. However, I think we can make the sea wall towards the edge here a bit more of an interesting shape, which is why I'm expanding it out here where the marina will eventually be. Of course, to add some verticality, like I did with the left side, I'm going to raise it up by 2 blocks, and this will also make the building that I'm going to put on it here look a lot more prominent. Now, I don't like the look of just the right angles, which is why I'm starting to introduce some curved sections, and this just helps the city break away from a boring right-angled grid pattern that often gets very repetitive very quickly. Some shallow steps will work well to transition to the upper level. Now, because I'm a bit fussy, I'm going to line it up with the palm trees by adding some separating walls. Next, similar with the left side of the waterfront, I'm going to add a low-rise building along the edge. Now, I envision this as some sort of yacht or boat club by the marina, and to complement the curved border, it's going to be a circular building. So I'm going to sort of do it in a Bauhaus style, which will mean we're mostly going for a white and black colour palette, and then to give it that iconic look I'm raising it a floor above the ground with just some pillars holding it up. To quickly create the circles I'm just using World Edit, and for the windows if you add some glass panes it helps smoothen out the circle a bit more, which is nice. And here's the design for the front, where it's just a rectangle to contrast nicely. And as you can see, I've added a bit of interest using oxidized copper blocks, as well as some more grimy looking calcite blocks towards the bottom. Of course, for the greenery, I'm just using my usual combination of podzol, 2-block tall grass and mangrove leaves, edged off with some stairs of course. There, I think that's looking quite majestic from the seafront perspective. So we can now move on to these next apartments that I've planned out here. So I've cleared the platform and now I'm just going to use a typical palette of white, grey and dark brown with a combination of balconies and windows to plan out the first floor of these apartments. As you can see, I'm taking a lot of inspiration from the building on the left when it comes to the balconies. And similarly to that build, I'm adding some stripped wood behind the balconies. So I'm going to use what I think is quite an underrated block, which is stripped jungle wood. I just think it has a really nice warm tone to it, and doesn't have as strong a texture as the other wood blocks. You can actually see where I've designed the old dockside building in the distance over there. Anyway, now the first floor is done, let's copy that up and we can look to see where we can make some changes. Oh, now I think that looks very impressive from the street level, but there's a bit too much white for my liking, so let's quickly switch up some of the balconies. Nice, that's made it a lot more balanced, but it's made this white dividing wall look a bit too strong, so now I'm going to step that back a block, and while we're doing so, why not change it to a less dominant light grey colour using light grey concrete powder. So now I'm happier with the balance of light and dark for this section. I just think it's a bit too big, which is why again I'm going to take inspiration from the neighbouring block on the left and split it into 2 different but similar sets of apartments. Now to separate the 2 apartments we need to change up the colour palette of the other building. in the end I decided to take that warm jungle wood texture that I liked and put it on the outside. And to make it work, I've gone for a warmer colour palette overall, and I've moved the smooth quartz to the central set of windows. And actually there's now a perfect opportunity to add some more detail if we just add some trapdoors down the middle to give it the effect of a window casing or a glazing bar. I've also pasted it a few floors higher to make up for the fact that it's a bit smaller in width than the block next to it. It just looks right that it should then be taller, I don't know. Next we can work on making the street between the two buildings. Now it's important to add a lot of detail and variety to this street so that we can really bring the whole area together and make the city feel alive. So to start we can just copy over this brick street and again experiment with adding some deep slate for contrast. Now I was initially thinking of adding some palm trees down the middle of the street, but I decided against this for a few reasons. Firstly, it was getting a bit repetitive, like I've already used palm trees basically everywhere else. Secondly, they didn't actually frame the builds very well, just being in the centre of the street, which is why I'm designing some new trees to go on the side. And thirdly, they didn't actually add much vibrancy to the street compared to these new bushier trees with mangrove leaves that I'm designing now. I've also added some branches using fences and fence gates, and then I've just placed the birch and mangrove leaves over the top of that. I'm just going to use World Edit to flip the trees and paste them at different heights along the street. And so there we go. I think this would now be a very pleasant street to stroll down on a sunny day. Now we've done that, we can move on to planning the next major expansion to the city. So I'm starting off by marking out where the elevation change is going to be, because we need to at least somewhat get to a higher level to match the terrain behind it. And where I've placed the stone is where I'm planning to eventually put a mid-rise building. Here I've needed to raise this building by one block to accommodate the change in height. It's worth noting that I am planning on doing some more with the base of these buildings once I have everything planned out. Hopefully we can add some shop fronts and signs and things that would just add a lot of life to the streets. Right, so to start with, let's quickly copy over the pavement pattern from the other side of the waterfront and quickly mark in where some palm trees might go. And to expand the city further, we're going to add our first road, and so I'm clearing a lot of the terrain so that I've got plenty of space to just plan things out without any clutter. Starting with the basic shape of the road, it's important not to resort to just straight roads because, as I mentioned earlier, things become very repetitive very quickly. So I'm adding a small bend in the road towards the beach, which will also reduce the excess space between this new apartment block here and the road. But before I finish that, let's plan out the details of the road first. I think I'll use grey concrete powder because it's got an interesting road-like texture as opposed to something else like light grey concrete. And because I'd like this to be a bike-friendly city, I think we'll add a bike lane on the side here, and here would be a good place for a zebra crossing as well. Now, to separate the bike lane from the roadside traffic, you can either use bollards or bushes, but I'm actually going to use both and you'll see why later in the video. So currently what I'm thinking is over towards the beach, I'd like the city to be slightly inspired by sort of Spanish architecture and the built up beaches in southern Spain. And so I'd like this street to really give that warm holiday kind of vibe. Starting by pasting in some palm trees to line the streets. And behind them I'm designing a new style of sort of holiday inspired building that will therefore be mostly made up of balconies towards the front, so that of course people can enjoy the nice views and warm sea air. I've decided to use cyan glass for the balcony edge to give it that splash of colour and vibrancy, and the blue nicely echoes the blue of the ocean, I think. So now let's go into a quick design time lapse. Cool, now that's done, I'm going to move it to the right, and the poor llamas have unfortunately fallen down. Never mind. And again, I'm going to fuss over having it lined up with the pattern in this small plaza here. Moving on, I'm going to work on the road a bit. Because those other trees lining the pedestrian street worked so well, I'm going to design some more street of that style which will line the cycle lane, which is why I've partially used bushes to separate it from the road. Now these trees are going to be a bit smaller than the other ones, so that there's a very clear height difference between those and the palm trees that should tower above behind it. And I also think this creates a nice layered effect when going away from the street, where things get taller further back, which is a nice effect. So now a small update is I've designed a companion building to the blue one in a different colour palette to go behind these palm trees. Both of these buildings actually are inspired by a small holiday when I went to southern Spain, and I've chosen a warm sandstone colour palette for this second one to contrast with the cooler blue building, which as you can see I've now added sides to, with some round windows using stairs. In general in this video I've tried to make sure each building has a companion building in a similar style, so that there's a bit of a consistency in the buildings without being too repetitive. Now as nice as this sandstone building looks, I think I'm going to move it to the other side towards the beach, because for this area to the left I'm planning to use more commercial style buildings and offices and things. And so this building doesn't quite fit that vibe, especially with this grey building being planned here that's going to be a mid-rise. Next, to finish the progress for today, I'm going to design a similar side to this building, again with some round windows, which I just really like. And once that's done, I'm going to tidy up the street around it and have a start on an interesting base to the building. Right, now hopefully in the next video we can continue this street and add in some more greenery and even bring it more to life. Also I'm going to finish off the other buildings I've designed with some roofs and things. I might even get started on a nice marina for yachts and boats to go in, so watch out for that. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the progress for today and are as excited as I am to continue this city project. If you've enjoyed the video, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and let me know of any suggestions you might have in the comments. As always, thank you for watching.